The invitation to Saturday lunch caught me off guard. My parents hadn't reached out in nearly a year, not since I'd declined to co-sign a loan for my brother Mason's third startup attempt. My sister Jenna had called me heartless, reminding me how lucky I was to land a stable career. They all conveniently forgot that I'd clawed my way through undergrad and law school while working 2 part-time jobs and living out of a shared studio apartment. Meanwhile, my parents had quietly paid off Mason's credit card debt more than once and helped Jenna with a down payment on her condo in Scottsdale. Still, something about my mom's voice on the phone made my stomach tighten. After 12 years as a defense attorney in Chicago, I trusted my instincts. This felt like a setup. I pulled into their gated community in Evanston, my rented Camry humming quietly. I long stopped bringing anything flashy around them. The last time they saw me drive my Lexus, I didn't hear the end of how I changed and forgotten my roots. Jenna's white Tesla and Mason's Jeep were already out front. Of course, this wasn't lunch. It was a coordinated ambush. Vanessa, Mom beamed, opening the door like she hadn't been ignoring my texts for months. You made it. Everyone's already seated. The dining room was laid out like a holiday magazine spread, complete with Mom's heirloom crystal and gold-rimmed plates. Red flag number 1. Dad was at the head of the table, a thick brown folder tucked beside his elbow. Mason and Jenna sat on either side, both looking like they'd just secured a win. Didn't think you'd bother showing, Mason quipped, his grin tight. At 35, he still lived off their support while networking for venture capital. Jenna, 31, ran a skincare blog and had declared herself a wellness CEO. Too busy lawyering to check in on your own family, she added, tilting her mimosa. I took a slow breath and sat down, letting the jab slide. Nice setup, Mom. What's the big occasion? Mom fluttered her hands. Can't we just enjoy a nice family meal? But Dad's hands stayed planted firmly on the folder. Mom brought out her famous honey-glazed ham, reserved for Easter and the occasional guilt trip. Red flag number 2. I barely started eating when Dad cleared his throat. Vanessa, he said, drawing out my name like a judge delivering a sentence. We've made some decisions about our estate. He opened the folder and slid a stack of papers across the table. We've been speaking with our lawyer, Mom added quickly, and updating our will. Jenna chimed in, us trying to be fair, given who's always around and who isn't. Mason leaned back, smirking. It's only right that the ones who stay close get recognized. I looked at the pages in front of me. Their assets, all of them, were now being split between Jenna and Mason. I wasn't even listed as a beneficiary. Not a single mention. Not even the piano they once promised me as a child. I folded the papers neatly. Thank you for the ham, I said, standing, and the clarity. Their jaws barely had time to drop before I was already at the door. I had built a life on my own terms, and I didn't need their permission or their inheritance to keep going. We've decided, Dad said, adjusting his glasses like he was reading out a court verdict. Given your financial situation, you don't need an inheritance. The house, our savings. Everything will go to Jenna and Mason. I set my fork down, the soft clink of metal against porcelain cutting through the silence. My financial situation? You're a lawyer, Mom said, as if that settled everything. You make enough. Your siblings need the help more. I looked across the table. Jenna wore a Cartier bracelet I hadn't seen before, and her diamond rings sparkled under the chandelier. Mason had a tan and a Rolex that definitely wasn't from Target. Neither of them had ever lived without a financial safety net. They'd always leaned on our parents' wallets, while I built my life from grit, late nights, and student loan debt. Besides, Jenna chimed in, her voice syrupy, you turned your back on the family when you wouldn't support Mason's business. Family helps family. Mom's hand landed on the thick folder with the will inside, her eyes meeting mine with a cool finality. You're not getting a cent, Vanessa. That's final. The room held its breath. They waited for me to cry, plead, maybe lash out. I smiled, calm, steady, controlled. All right, I said, rising from my chair. Then don't expect a cent from me either. Not now, not ever. Mason scoffed. What's that supposed to mean? I picked up my purse, checking my phone out of habit. It means exactly what I said. Don't call me when you're in a bind. Don't call me when there's a legal issue. Don't call me for anything. You're being dramatic, Mom said, waving a hand like I was having a tantrum. Really? I paused by the doorway. Let's see who you call when Jenna gets sued for defamation again. Or when Mason needs legal protection from another failed investor deal. Let's see who picks up when you need someone to review medical forms, manage estate issues, or help you navigate the insurance bureaucracy. Their smiles began to crack. You wouldn't, Jenna said, her voice thinner now. Watch me. I turned once more at the door. You made your choice. Now live with it. As I drove back toward the city, I glanced once at the rearview mirror. I could see them standing in the window, proud of themselves for cutting me out, thinking they'd finally put me in my place. They had no idea. Some storms don't rumble. They arrive in silence. The first sign came 3 weeks later. Mason called me 17 times in a single hour. I didn't pick up, not once. I remembered their smug faces and Mom's words. You're not getting a cent. The 18th call came from the hospital. Miss Clark? It was Dr. Reyes from Northbrook Medical. We have a patient in the ER, Mason Clark. Severe abdominal distress. We'd like your consult. I'm not his attorney, I said calmly. And I'm off duty. I understand, Dr. Reyes said. He specifically asked for you. I paused, my voice like ice. Tell him I said good luck. He'll need it. And I hung up. If you've ever been cut out, counted out, or told you didn't need what you'd earned, hit subscribe. Vanessa's story isn't over yet, and trust me, what comes next will change everything. He's demanding to see you specifically. I'm not available, I replied, keeping my voice even. Any of the associates on duty can assist him. The pause crackled on the other end. Having trouble with payment, he said you usually handle those things for your family. I almost laughed. Of course, for years I'd quietly managed legal paperwork, negotiated discounts, and pulled strings to make things easier for all of them. They never knew how often I intervened before things spiraled. Not anymore. Treat him like any other client. Standard rates, no favors. Mason was facing a serious business lawsuit, breach of contract with damages in the 6 figures. Without my intervention, he'd need to pay up front just to get representation. His last 3 failed startups had tanked his credit, and my parents' assets were mostly tied up in their overpriced suburban home. A week later, Jenna's crisis arrived. She'd posted a glamorous photo of herself in Aspen mid-ski, just days before calling in tears. Vanessa, please, she cried in a voicemail. I signed the wrong waiver at the resort, and now I'm being threatened with litigation over a liability claim. I can't afford a lawyer. My phone lit up with call after call, texts, voice messages. Mom and Dad can't help because of Mason's case. Her voice cracked. I know what happened at the will dinner, but I'm your sister. I hit delete. 2 weeks later, the real call came. It was 3:12 a.m. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. Vanessa, Mom's voice was panicked, broken. It's your father. He collapsed. Cardiac arrest. He's in the hospital. They say he needs surgery immediately, but Vanessa, they want $150,000 for the procedure. And the top surgeon, they said he only works by referral. You know him, don't you? I was already at the hospital. I'd been notified when he was admitted. My name still flagged in the system as a professional contact. I stood outside his room, watching through the glass as he lay unconscious, hooked to beeping monitors. The best cardiac surgeon, I said into the phone, is Dr. Ellis. Yes, I know him. He takes referrals from people he trusts. From me. Please, Mom whispered. We'll change the will. We'll undo everything. I stared through the window at the man who had signed away any support for his daughter. This isn't about the will anymore, I said quietly. This is about years of treating me like a backup plan, the fixer, the wallet, the one who was always fine on her own. He's your father, she pleaded. And I'm your daughter, I said, the one you cut out because I didn't need you. There was nothing but silence on the other end. There are other hospitals, Mom said finally, her voice trembling. Yes, I replied. And every top surgeon in this city knows me. They know my work, my standards, my referrals. Good luck. I hung up, sliding my phone into my coat pocket, and I walked away. They value my referrals, I said flatly. Good luck finding someone who will take on a high-risk legal case without a retainer, especially with your current financial standing. I ended the call, watching through the glass as Mom returned to Dad's bedside. She looked smaller somehow, older, hollowed out by the reality they never thought would come. Jenna and Mason huddled in the corner, whispering frantically. The storm they'd never believed in had finally hit, and I wasn't coming with an umbrella. The nurse passed by and paused. "Miss Clark, your father's legal proxy just lapsed again. The family's paperwork isn't in order." I nodded, the pieces falling into place. "Let the standard court process handle it. File it with probate intake." "No rush. Not your usual white glove legal protection?" she asked, a little stunned. "No, they've made their position clear. I'm just respecting it." The next 48 hours unraveled my family in a way no inheritance ever could. I watched from a distance as they scrambled to hire emergency counsel, maxed out cards, and pleaded with the hospital finance office. Jenna sold her designer handbags online. Mason listed his Jeep on Facebook Marketplace. Mom called cousins she hadn't spoken to in years, asking for money. On the third day, I ran into Elijah Grant, lead counsel on the hospital's board and a longtime friend, outside the elevators. "Vanessa," he said carefully, "your father's case? I've never seen you recuse yourself from a family matter." "Things change," I replied, scanning documents on my tablet. "He'll have to go through county legal aid." Elijah glanced toward the corridor. "You know, their success rate in medical liability defense is significantly lower for high-risk clients." I looked up. Sometimes people need to learn what their choices cost, not just in dollars, but in consequence. Later that evening, I found Mom in the hospital's small chapel alone. Her shoulders were shaking, makeup smudged from tears. "We found someone at County Legal," she said. "They'll represent us. The odds aren't great, but it's all we can afford." I sat down beside her but didn't move closer. There was no warmth left to offer. "You know, Mom," I began, voice steady, "for over 15 years, I've been your crisis hotline, your fixer. Every lawsuit, every eviction notice you hid from the neighbors, every contract Mason botched. I handled it. You said nothing, just stared at the altar. Not because you ever asked with gratitude. Not because you cared how I was holding up, but because I thought that's what family did." "Vanessa, we didn't know." "No, you knew," I said, sharper now. "You just didn't care. You saw my success not as something to be proud of, but something to use. When was the last time any of you asked me about my day? About the cases I win, the clients I protect, the 80-hour weeks I pull?" She turned to look at me, tears spilling again. "Did you know I was offered a partnership at a top New York firm last month?" I asked. "Of course not. I planned to announce it at that family dinner, but instead you disinherited me." Mom's hands trembled as she spoke. "We can change the will." "This isn't about the will anymore," I said quietly. "It's about respect, about realizing that family isn't defined by who earns what or who gives the most." I looked her directly in the eyes. "It's about understanding that success carries responsibility, not obligation." I stood up, straightening my navy blazer, the hospital ID still clipped to my lapel. "I've instructed Attorney Delgado to take Dad's case. Pro bono." Her head jerked up in disbelief. "Not because of your tears, not because of the money, and definitely not because of guilt." I took a breath. "I'm doing it because I took an oath to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I won't let my father become another casualty of this family's entitlement." "Thank you, Vanessa," she whispered, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. "Don't thank me yet. There are conditions." Her eyes widened. "First," I said, "Jenna and Mason get real jobs, not social media stunts, not vague consulting gigs. Actual employment with actual hours." She nodded slowly. "Second, you and Dad start family counseling weekly, non-negotiable. Third, no more bailouts, no more emergency calls unless someone is in danger. You all need to learn how to stand on your own. And if we don't agree," she asked quietly, "then Dad gets transferred to county legal aid, and you all live with that choice like you asked me to live with mine." 20 minutes later, I watched them sign the agreement my associate had drawn up and sent over. Jenna cried as she accepted an entry-level receptionist job at a nonprofit. Mason agreed to sell his luxury watch and downgrade his apartment so he could finally start paying his own way. Mom and Dad committed to a licensed family therapist. No shortcuts, no excuses. Dad's case was handled expertly. His legal battle was resolved in his favor, thanks to the effort of people who cared more about justice than money. During his recovery, I visited, but only as his attorney, not his daughter. I kept my boundaries. They'd finally learned to respect them. 6 months later, things looked different. Jenna surprised everyone, especially herself, by thriving in her role. She liked having her own income, her own schedule. She even started saving. Mason launched a small but honest business, fixing up rental properties with a friend from high school. He'd stopped asking for money entirely. My parents, once so proud of their control, began to value connection instead. They started seeing their children not as extensions of themselves, but as individuals. As for the will, they revised it to divide everything equally. But honestly, by then it didn't matter. What mattered was that they finally understood something more important. That family isn't a hierarchy of needs or a pyramid of power. It's a partnership. Today, my parents' house has a new family photo on the wall. It was taken the day I was sworn in as a partner at a top New York law firm. Jenna's wearing an off-the-rack dress, but her smile is real. Mason's tie was clearly on sale, but his pride is unmistakable. Mom and Dad look older, but softer, wiser. And me, I'm standing at the center, not as their piggy bank, but as Vanessa Clark, Esquire, partner and daughter, not just seen but finally respected. Sometimes the hardest lessons require the strongest boundaries, and sometimes it takes hitting bottom for a family to rise. They never tried to use me again because what they gained was worth more than money. Mutual respect, real growth, and a love that didn't have a price tag. The will now sits forgotten in a drawer because the true inheritance, we're building it together. If you've ever carried the weight of a family that took your strength for granted, leave a comment. I want to hear your story too. Tell me how you found your voice, how you set your boundaries, or how you're still learning to. And if this resonated with you, subscribe, not for me, but for you. Because sometimes the greatest power we have is choosing ourselves without guilt. Keep building your life with grace, strength, and unshakable self-worth. We're in this together.